I didn't want to find a stranger. I just wanted to be with the one I love. I stood aside, sneering. He finally admitted it. Lucas's wife was completely enraged by this statement. She grabbed Layla by the hair and slapped her several times across the face. As it looked like a big fight was about to break out, I quickly moved to the door and stepped outside. Soon, there were sounds of insults and chairs being thrown in the room. Luckily, I had a client who happened to know Lucas's wife. He had posted a photo with Lucas and his wife on Twitter. Otherwise, I wouldn't have witnessed this scene. Just as I got home, the police called me, asking me to come in for a statement. When I got to the police station, Lucas and Layla's friends had bruises on their faces. Lucas looked at me with fiery eyes as if he wanted to swallow me whole. Eve, fearing she might hit me in her impulsiveness, hurriedly grabbed him and gave me a warning look. I scoffed, following the police into the statement room. By the time I finished the statement, it was already 1 in the morning. I heard that Layla had been shocked and was showing signs of a miscarriage, so she had been taken to the hospital. Lucas and his friends were detained. I saw Layla again a week later. She asked me to go out to handle the divorce paperwork. But she drove to the villa where we used to live, and I asked her in confusion, "What do you mean?" She had a serious expression and said, "If you want a divorce, then kneel down and apologize to Lucas." I retorted angrily, "Why should I? He deserves everything that's happening to him." After saying that, I opened the car door to get out, but she locked it. "You caused me to miscarry and almost caused him to get divorced. Isn't asking you to apologize a small price to pay?" She glared at me with red eyes. I laughed. "Isn't this even better? It perfectly suits you and him, doesn't it?" Hearing this, Layla suddenly went mad and got out of the car. Then she opened the door and dragged me out. "You must apologize today." She said this while pulling me toward the villa. I didn't struggle, wanting to see Lucas's current miserable state. After all, I heard his wife was a rich woman. Now that she has lost her cash cow, I couldn't imagine how she would cry. She dragged me into our former bedroom. Lucas lay on the bed with a pale face. When he saw me, he got up excitedly and walked towards me, hitting me hard. "Damn you! Is it worth it to ruin my marriage over a child?" He was about to hit me again when Layla stopped him. "Lucas, don't hit him. It's not worth getting yourself upset. I'll make him kneel and apologize to you in that." Layla looked at me. "You kneel and apologize to Lucas today, and this matter will be over." I spat. "In your dreams." Suddenly, my knee hurt and I was forced to kneel. Lucas pressed down on my shoulder. "Since you're here, you have no choice." Seeing me in such a pitiful state, Lucas smirked and slowly crouched down, looking at me fiercely. "How can your heart be so malicious? Do you feel accomplished killing an innocent child?" I sneered, staring at him fearlessly, and slowly replied, "Yes, I wanted your child to die, and I want you and Layla to die too." "All right, then I'll let you die first." My pupils dilated instantly as I watched her pull out a fruit knife and quickly stab it into my body. Layla reacted and hurriedly pushed her away, then hugged me. "Tyler, are you okay?" I felt no pain, but my vision darkened and I lost consciousness. I don't know how long it was, but when I woke up, I was in the hospital. Layla was sitting by my bed, her head lowered, dozing off. Seeing her, my mind went blank for a moment, but I quickly remembered everything. I looked at her coldly, wishing I could stab her. Suddenly, I saw a cup on the bedside cabinet. I endured the pain from my wound and reached for the cabinet. Perhaps the noise was too loud, waking Layla, who looked at me in surprise. At that moment, I grabbed the cup and threw it at her face with all my strength. She didn't dodge in time, and the cup hit her on the forehead, causing a trickle of blood to flow down. She was momentarily stunned, then walked to my side with an expression of guilt. I disgustedly shrugged off her touch, which made my wound ache again, causing me to hiss in pain. "Tyler, I'm sorry. I didn't expect him to hide a knife." She watched me carefully, her eyes filled with guilt and self-blame. "Get out of here." I shouted in anger and immediately felt a tearing pain in my wound. I looked down and saw blood oozing out, soaking my hospital gown. Layla was startled by the sight and hurriedly ran out to find a doctor. For the next few days, Layla shamelessly came to see me, but I didn't touch any of the food she brought. When I was starving, I could only hire a caregiver, not daring to tell my parents about my injury for fear they would worry. In the meantime, I also contacted a lawyer. After I sued Lucas, Layla once again shamelessly came to me, begging me to drop the lawsuit. Tyler, Lucas was just confused for a moment. Can you not hold it against him? I was so angry I laughed. If it was just confusion, then let him go to jail and wake up. Tyler, how can Lucas bear the suffering in there? Can I kneel for you? As she said this, Layla suddenly knelt down. Seeing her pathetic appearance, a surge of pleasure coursed through me. Don't even think that kneeling for me will work. Even if Lucas himself came to kneel to me, it wouldn't matter. Get lost. After Layla left unwillingly, my lawyer arrived at the hospital. She analyzed the case for me, and overall, Lucas could not escape legal repercussions this time. I saw Lucas again in court. He smugly looked at me and said, "Layla has hired the most authoritative lawyer in Riviera for me. Just wait for your loss." I smiled silently and looked at my lawyer. She said with a hint of sarcasm, "Don't worry." I nodded happily, instantly feeling a strong sense of security. When Lucas heard my lawyer's name in court, he immediately lost his smirk. The lawyer I hired this time was Zofia, a leading figure in the legal field, and she had never lost a case. It's hard for ordinary people to hire her, but I could anytime. It's all because she is the daughter of my mom's close friend, and I have known her since childhood. We talked about everything. Unsurprisingly, Lucas was sentenced to 3 years in prison for intentional injury. He was also ordered to pay for all my medical expenses during my hospitalization. Upon hearing the verdict, Lucas slumped down in defeat. In the days that followed, after I recovered, I prepared to file for divorce from Layla. She knew that if it went to court, she would definitely lose, so she finally agreed to a divorce settlement with me. The day I received the divorce agreement, a huge weight was finally lifted from my heart. I felt lighter both physically and mentally. This time, I wanted to live for myself. I had wasted my youth on Layla, and from now on, I would only live for me. To show my gratitude, I invited Zofia to dinner, thinking she would refuse due to her busy schedule, but she came anyway. I was surprised. She was known to be a workaholic, and since she started working, I rarely got to see her. Every time I invited her, she always declined due to work. Just like before, whenever I saw her, I had endless things to say. She listened quietly, occasionally serving me food. After dinner, she mentioned wanting to go home, so she offered to give me a ride. Her house and mine were neighbors. My mom bought a house next to hers to avoid separating from her close friend. As we were getting out of the car, I invited her to come in and sit for a bit. My parents hadn't seen her for a long time and often talked about her. Sure, she agreed without a second thought. Just as we were about to leave, a voice called out to me, "Tyler." I turned around to see Layla approaching me, looking dispirited. "Tyler, can you give me another chance?" she asked. "This time I'll pursue you. I promise I won't contact Lucas again. I'll cut all ties with him." She hung her head low, unable to look at me, lacking her usual confidence. Her confidence came from my repeated indulgence and tolerance, believing that I would never leave her. Zofia seemed afraid I would soften. She cautiously tugged at my sleeve. I reassured her, "Don't worry." Then I turned my gaze back to Layla and said, "Honestly, you and Lucas are quite a match. You're both selfish and self-serving. You might as well wait for him to finish his prison sentence and marry him. You two should lock yourselves away and not harm others." Layla looked up at me, her heart in despair, her lips trembling as she wanted to say something but didn't know how to start. There was a hint of hopelessness and helplessness in her eyes, as if she had lost all hope and courage. I no longer paid her any mind and pulled Zofia along toward my house. My parents were excited to see Zofia and immediately engaged her in conversation, asking about everything. Zofia had always been seen as the perfect child. My parents liked her very much and even considered her a goddaughter. I also recognized her mother as my godmother, and whenever we visited each other's homes, we were treated like national treasures. However, since I got married in the past few years, she had rarely come to my house. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. When I opened it, I was surprised to see Zofia's mother. She froze for a moment upon seeing me, then joyfully hugged me, ruffling my messy hair. It was just like when we were kids. She still treated me like a little child. Tyler, when did you come back? I smiled and pulled her inside. Just a little while ago. Your precious daughter is here too. Come on, it's rare for the kids to be back. Let's go out and celebrate, she urged. Upon seeing her good friend, my mom immediately stood up to welcome her. Looking at this harmonious scene, my eyes felt a bit swollen. Over the years, I had put all my thoughts on Layla and had almost no life of my own. Every day, I was exhausted by the various trivial matters involving Layla and Lucas, getting sick numerous times, but not daring to tell my parents, afraid of worrying them. Fortunately, I was completely liberated this time. A week later, my mom happily told me some explosive news. Zofia's mom wanted to matchmake me with Zofia. I was shocked, thinking they must be out of their minds. Zofia is the same age as me, and we were very familiar with each other. How could she possibly like me? This matchmaking was going to make it awkward for me to face her in the future, but when my mom learned about my worries, she mysteriously told me that Zofia had brought it up herself. I was stunned again. How could she? Years later, I still ended up marrying Zofia. I finally learned everything from her. It turned out she had always liked me. She just excelled at keeping her feelings hidden. You liked me. Why didn't you say anything? I pinched her cheek, pretending to be angry as I questioned her. But inside, I felt sweet as if sprinkled with honey. She tightly hugged my neck, her eyes filled with love. Because I wanted you to wait for me until I fulfilled my dream of becoming a lawyer before I told you. I didn't expect you to have feelings for someone else too. As I said, the last sentence, the corners of her eyes turned red. I felt heartbroken and hugged her tightly, kissing her. In fact, when I was very young, I was her little follower, but she was too dominant, which made me a bit dislike her. She was a good student, and I was the playful type. We couldn't really connect in conversation. Gradually, I stopped seeking her out. Later, I met Layla, who was completely different in character from Zofia. Layla was gentle and kind to others, and I gradually became attracted to her, becoming close friends with her. But she also had someone hidden in her heart, a senior named Lucas. Lucas was handsome and danced street dance well, being the popular guy at school. Layla liked him a lot and pursued him for 3 years before finally winning him over. Then they got together, but right after graduation, Lucas got married. It was a marriage arranged by his family long ago. I didn't know whether he really liked Layla. He could just abandon her for someone he barely knew to get married. But when Layla decided to give up on him, he came back to flirt with her. Layla, like a dog, would follow him as long as he tossed her a bone. Yet, the pride in Layla's heart made her unwilling to admit she still loved Lucas. She always said she just pitied him. I was foolish too, believing her again and again until she made a ridiculous mistake. It was then that I finally woke up. But it was still not too late. Layla's POV. I thought I didn't love Tyler, but when he fell before me, bloodied, I panicked completely. My heart seemed to stop beating as I rushed him to the hospital. I kept praying for him to be okay. I would even trade my life for his. I anxiously waited all night at the hospital until he was out of danger. Watching him lying on the hospital bed, pale after coming out of danger, my frantic heart gradually calmed down, then began to ache bit by bit. It felt like being gnawed by ants. Both my heart and body told me that I loved him, but I realized it too late. Fortunately, we weren't divorced yet, and I still had a chance. I stayed by his bedside, anxiously waiting for him to wake up, wanting to tell him I was wrong. During this time, Lucas called me many times, asking how he was doing, whether he was dead. I angrily yelled at him for the first time. He cried on the phone, accusing me and saying he was scared of going to jail. But I had completely lost patience with him. I hung up the phone and turned off my phone. At this moment, I just wanted to protect my husband well. Unknowingly, I fell asleep. In my dream, Tyler was very cold to me. He said he no longer loved me and wanted to divorce me, which made me wake up in distress. When I realized Tyler was awake, I was filled with joy and was about to hug him, but he threw a cup at me in anger, telling me to get lost. He wouldn't listen to anything I said, his face filled with disgust towards me, that gaze piercing deeply into my heart. In the midst of our argument, his wound opened up, bleeding a lot, and I didn't dare say anything more, fearing it would upset him, so I hurried to find a doctor. Luckily, there was nothing serious, and just as I finally relaxed, Lucas found me again. He said his wife had divorced him. He pleaded with me to help him one last time, telling me how he had loved me all these years and that his family had forced him to break up with me. I softened again and decided to help him one last time. I mustered the courage to ask Tyler to withdraw the lawsuit. As a result, he grew even more resentful toward me. I had no choice but to hire Riveria's best lawyer for Lucas, hoping for a lighter punishment. However, Tyler's lawyer was someone that ordinary people could hardly hire. I knew that this time, no one could save him. But perhaps that was for the best. It was the best punishment for him. For the rest of my life, all I wanted was Tyler's forgiveness, hoping we could be together again. I waited downstairs at his place. It was very cold, and I waited for a long time, long enough for my body to go numb, until I finally saw him. But he got out of someone else's car, laughing and chatting. Seeing them about to leave, I gathered my courage and called out to him once more. I wanted to start over with him, wanting to show him my heart, begging for just one chance. But he resolutely rejected me again, saying that I was just like Lucas, both selfish and self-serving. Indeed, I was selfish. I didn't want to lose him at all, but now I had no chance left. The end.